Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, I'm bringing back one of my older builds. Not super old, but pretty old. But we're bringing it back because I think that with the new update of the Gates of Oblivion stuff and the new CP changes and just the way the game is playing now, this build really fits into the game really well. And it's an amazing build. So if you guys don't know, there was a build that came out a while back. It was actually created by somebody I know called the Killer Mech. It was called the Tesla Tank. Really popular, really amazing build. And I took it in a different direction, and I came up with the Tempest Barbarian. It uses a lot of the same functionality as the Tesla Tank, but it's meant to be a more of like a traditional barbarian from D&D in the way it works. Now, in D&D, Killer Mech actually plays a build very similar to this, and I just kind of took a step further. So here you guys go. This is the Tempest Barbarian. Oh, Nord actually is the best race for this because of the fact of the extra resistances it gets, but you can play any race with this. You just have to alter a few things, and when you do that, it changes how the build works in a lot of ways. So it doesn't mean any other race can't play it. Every race can play this build. It's just that you're not going to be able to reach really high resistances with them. So taking a look at our attributes, we have 14 in the health and 50 in the stamina. This gives us a 20k max magicka, 31k max health, and 30k stamina. I know the health seems low, but the build doesn't need a lot of health to do its job of tanking and stuff. What it needs is a good player behind it that knows mechanics. Once you have that down, this build is insanely powerful. I've played it on live for a while, tanked many dungeons with it, and it's more of a dungeon tank than it is a trial tank. Not saying that it can't tank trials, it can in the right hands. Again, it comes down to your ability to play the game, but a really good one. 30k max stamina, and then we have 1101 mag recovery with 609 health recovery, 1155 stam recovery. As you can see, our spell damage is coming in at 2844, spell crit 22% with a 2339 spell penetration. We do have a 3619 weapon damage, 32% weapon critical. This actually goes up, both weapon, the weapon crit and the spell crit will go up a little bit. So, it really depends on how you build it and you play it, kind of thing. You can have higher crit here. It just depends, again, like I said, how you build it. Physical pin 1400, spell resist 19960, and physical resist 191234 with a 1320 crit resistance. That's just flat. But let's go ahead and take a look at the advanced stats. As you can see, our block cost is pretty high, but we're not using this build to stand and hold block. This build doesn't need block. It can actually absorb a lot of the damage that it takes. The main things you're going to block is the major hits, the things that do a lot of damage to you. And then, of course, you're going to want to avoid those other things, so where you take a lot of damage. And as you can see, our dodge roll is actually in a pretty decent place. 2872 cost and 4712 break free. That's still really high, but there's not a lot you can do to make break free any cheaper, to be honest. Besides, your CP and a few other areas of the game. But resistance-wise, you can see we have really good damage mitigation. And when we buff up with our resistance buff, we actually go to 25, 908, 25, 182, and our resistances go up even higher, makes us more survivable. Frost resist is where we really shine because we are a Nord. Again, really good setup here. We are running the Thief Stone. You want to run the Thief Stone to make this build really, really work well. And then we are using Tristat Food. Alright. Taking a look at our equipment now. And we will start with our monster set, go to the next 5-piece set, down to the jewelry set, or the jewelry and weapons. So this is a medium armor build. I know, sounds crazy, but it is a really good tank build. So, taking a look at the first set, Storm Fist of Siege. This one adds stam recovery to your overall stam recovery. Really good, especially with the way this build plays. It kind of plays with a rotation, not really, because tanks are situational, but you do have time to throw out a couple things in the build's kind of rotational play, which allows for a more effective playability. The next set we're running is something else. This is Storm Masters, and this has on the 2-piece and 3-piece weapon crit, 4-piece weapon damage, 5-piece. When you deal critical damage with a fully charged heavy attack, your light and heavy attacks deal an additional 1,542 damage for 20 seconds. This effect can occur once every 10 seconds. So it's pretty much every 10 seconds you're going to want to do a heavy attack, even though it lasts 20 seconds. But that's just to keep that crit chance of keeping this proc going a lot. It plays really well into the build's design. Next up, we are using another lightning set, and that is Thunderbug. It is the set that makes this build shine, and it is 2-piece and 3-piece are armor, 4-piece spell damage, and then the 5-piece. When you take physical damage, you deal 5,671 shock damage in a 5-meter radius around you. This effect can occur once every 3 seconds. This set is amazing. Like, it is incredible how much damage this thing can deal for you. And it's one of the reasons why this tank is more of a damage dealer tank than it is just a tank itself. So, right. So let's go over the armor type first. What we're using an armor type, so like light, medium, heavy, that kind of thing. Then we'll go over traits, and then we'll go over enchants, and we'll go over traits. So on the helm, we're using a heavy helm, reinforced with the Tristat. But let's get to the overall. So heavy here, light shoulders, and then 5-piece is going to be the Storm Masters. This is all medium. Now, there is a trick to this that you can do. If you don't want to use the Storm Masters, you can use Hunting's Rage, and you can actually craft it with a heavy chest. That makes this build, I wouldn't say comparable, but it does make it a little better in the sense of like dealing damage with your light and heavy attacks. But the fact that this deals, whenever you deal crit damage, you get that lightning charge is really good. So, and that's pretty much it for the armor types. Going to the enchants, we're running 3 Tristats, as always, on the bigger pieces. This is going to give you that higher max resource in all 3 types. And then on the smaller pieces, we're running the max health enchants. This is going to maximize your health pool a lot for tanking. And also on the smaller pieces, we are now, when it comes to traits, we're running reinforced head, invigorating chest and legs. That's to give you that little bit of extra recovery. And then we're running divines on the gauntlets, shoulders, belt, and boots. This is to maximize the Thief Mundus stones, so we can actually take advantage of that higher crit chance, because we want that high crit for Storm Masters, or the Storm Master set to work. Moving on to Thunderbug Jewelry, we are running 2 Trirune rings with weapon damage. This is to maximize our weapon damage overall. You can change this out if you want to, the enchants, but the traits I would leave alone. Trirune is going to be really good for this. On the necklace infused, this is going to give you a greater effectiveness of your enchant, which is a mag recovery. You want that high mag recovery because some of your abilities are magicka based, and so keeping those up, you're going to want to keep that higher magicka return. All right, running down to the weapons, we are running 2 Thunderbug axes, 1 infused, 1 Nirnhoned. Now, if you don't have Nirnhoned, you can run Sharpen here, or you can run even defensive here. That'll give you a little bit more resistances. But always run an infused main hand because you're going to have a shock damage enchant there. That's going to help your group out with you applying the shock status effect. And then on the offhand, you're going to be using Nirnhoned with the physical damage and stamina restore. Alright, moving on to back bar. We're using an infused Crusher enchant here. And we're using it on a two-handed weapon because Crusher works better on two-handed than it does on one-handed weapons. It gives you the higher amount of spell and physical penetration. Excuse me. But it works out really well with the way this build plays. Alright, so now that I've shown you guys that, we're going to go ahead and move on to skills. And speaking of skills, all passives I would suggest unlocking for your class, your weapons that you're using, your armors that you're using, including light and heavy, even though you're only using one piece of each. Your guild skills, I would unlock fighters, mages, Psijic Order, and then Daunted passives and their skills as well. When it comes to Alliance War, though, you don't need as many. Aggressive Horn, Echoing Vigor, and Razor Caltrops, along with Continuous Attack. And then the same thing with Support, Replenishing Barrier, Efficient Purge, Stalwart Guard, and Magic Aid. These are going to be things that you're going to use situationally a lot of times. A lot of these skills, the ones we have on our bar, are the ones we're going to be using primarily. So, Nord, all the passives, and then of course when it comes to Alchemy, medicinal use, and provisioning, Gourmand, and Connoisseur. These are all going to help you in the long run of doing more dungeons and trials and world bosses and things like that, with just being able to maintain your higher health pools, your higher stamina pool, your higher stuff. That's why we have the alchemy and provisioning. Alright, going over skills we have on the bar. Now, a lot of people are going to say, I don't have access to this skill on the first skill of the bar. You can start this build out with Sword and Shield if you want to, and then eventually switch to Dual Wield when you have this skill unlocked. But I would suggest unlocking this skill, doing dungeons at lower, like as you're leveling this build, doing dungeons to unlock the Undaunted, to get this one skill, and that is Inner Rage. Now, we're morphing it from Inner Fire to Inner Rage. This is the Magicka morph. This is the reason why I said you're going to be using a lot of Magicka, so you want to be able to maintain that Magicka pool really well. This basically gives you Magicka, deals Magicka damage, taunts the enemy for 15 seconds, and it also is a synergy. Now, it doesn't have Breach. A lot of people are going to bring that up. Don't worry about that, because there are other sources of Breach in the game, and we are using one of them. So, Inner Rage, though, great ability for taunting at range and even up close. Next ability we have on our bar, and this is primarily to keep that shock enchant applied to multiple targets in an AoE form, and that's Steel Tornado. Really effective with that. So launch yourself into a lethal spin, releasing flurry of blades around you that deal 6,169 physical damage to nearby enemies, and it will proc your shock enchant a lot. Next ability we have is Empowered Ward. Now, a lot of people are going to say, why are you using this over the Hardened Ward? There's a reason for it. One, this shield is based off of your max health. It gives you a shield that absorbs 7,299 damage for 10 seconds. The shield strength does scale with your max health, but it also grants you minor intellect to you and nearby allies, increasing your mag recovery by 15% for 10 seconds. So you want to keep this up a lot. It's going to help you. It's going to help your group. Mag recovery is super important to you. Next up, Deadly Cloak. This is an AoE. It also gives you major evasion, which reduces damage from area of attacks by 20%. You do take area attacks a lot in dungeons and trials, so this will help out. And then every second, the shrapnel will pulse, dealing 1,158 physical damage to all enemies within 5 meters. If you haven't noticed, this thing is just an AoE disaster tank. Next ability we have on our bar is one you're not going to activate too often. We mainly have it here for the slotted effect, but this one, arm yourselves with the power of Oblivion for 40 seconds, causing your light and heavy attacks to summon a bound weapon for 10 seconds, up to 4 times. You can reactivate this ability at half the cost, and to arm the weapons, causing them to strike your target, dealing 3,140 physical damage every 3 seconds. But while slotting, your max stamina is increased by 8%, and your light attacks deal 10% more damage. This is really important. That 10% more damage, along with the lightning damage that you do when you do those when you do the heavy attack to crit, will give you a really good damage output. This build doesn't need to change anything to even play Overland. Next up, we have Rend. This one, you slash your enemies in front of you and causing them to bleed, to take a lot of bleed damage over 16 seconds, and it heals you for 52% of the damage done. We don't use that a whole lot. That's primarily for when you're doing like world bosses or Overland and you just want to kill the things fast. Next up, Backbar. This is where things get really good, and one of the abilities you can swap out, and this is where you can get your Breach. And you're actually going to get your Breach from Razor Caltrops. It's an AoE Breach ability. And you can keep this up 100% of the time if you know how to use the skill. So it has a 10-second cooldown, 8-meter range, and it reapplies every second the Breach. But that's not what we're using. Instead, we are actually going to be using Brawler. Now, Brawler is how we're going to keep the Crusher enchant applied. You're going to be swapping bars back and forth a lot with this build, because, like I said, it's more of a situational play than a rotational play, but there are times where you're going to be able to use like a somewhat of a rotation. So this one focuses strength into a mighty swing, dealing physical damage to all enemies you hit, also having a chance, applying the Crusher to all of them. You also gain a damage shield that absorbs X amount of damage for 6 seconds, and each enemy hit increases the damage shield strength by 50% up to 300%. You can actually get a massive shield out of this. So having the shields on both bars really helps. And as you can see, one does cost Magicka along with your taunt, and then over here you have this Magicka ability, and you have more. Next ability we have is Lightning Flood. Now this is just for the fact it's a synergy. It helps your group with that effect of keeping synergies out. But it's mainly here because it deals a lot of shock damage. And that will help apply the shock status effect. So it's not as effective as our enchant, but it does help. And this is where you can swap out for Razor Caltrops if you need that major breach more effectively over anything else to increase the damage done to enemies. Next ability we have is Crit Surge, and this is why this build can pretty much survive with no problem. So you don't need the higher resistances, you don't need the higher health pool. This will do that for you. So this one, you invoke Meridia's name to gain major brutality and major sorcery, increasing both weapon and spell damage by 20% for 33 seconds. While active, dealing critical damage heals you for 3,431 health. This effect can occur once every second. Now, if you didn't notice, a lot of our abilities are AoE based. And the reason for that is for the Crit Surge. Anytime you deal critical damage, you heal yourself. So every time you crit, you're going to heal yourself. And this is going to keep you as a very powerful person in your group. Alright, next up, we have Hurricane. Another great ability for what it does. It gives you the major resolve increasing physical and spell resistance. It also gives you minor expedition, which increases your movement speed by 15%. But it deals physical damage every second for 15 seconds, and the wind grows up in damage and size, increasing up to 150% more damage, up to 9 meters in size. You don't want this to come off of cooldown. So you want to reapply this every 15 seconds. It's kind of like your taunt. You want to reapply it every 15 seconds. You want this applied every 15 seconds. In fact, taunt you want to apply every 10 seconds if you can. But this you want to keep up all the time, because it's going to be your main boost to resistances. But that extra damage does play well with the way the build works. We do have the bound armaments here as well for the max stamina and the light attack damage. And then last but not least, the trusty old aggressive Warhorn. Now this you activate as much as you can in a group scenario, adding max magicka and stamina for 30 seconds, and that increases by 10%. And then you and your allies gain major force, increasing your critical damage by 20%. For 10 seconds. If you didn't notice, I'm using nothing but axes. By using axes as my weapon of choice, not only does it increase my it increases your critical damage done and healing done by 4% for each axe on the dual wield, so that's 8% increase, with another 12% in CP, which we'll get to, and some other stuff. You know, there's a lot of ways to boost up your crit, but this basically increases critical damage and critical healing. Crit surge. On two-handed, the same thing applies here as well. With the heavy weapons expert, you get the 8% extra crit damage and critical healing. Alright, that is it for the skills. We're going to take a look at CP now. Green tree. Basically, the path you're going to want to unlock as you progress is Gilded Fingers, Fortune's Favor, Wanderer, Steadfast Enchantment. I would suggest maxing this out as soon as you can, but the main ones you're going to want to max out first is Rationer, Liquid Efficiency, Steed's Blessing, and Professional Upkeep. These are the ones you're going to use the most in dungeon situations, and in some cases, trial situations. And then from there on, you can put whatever, you can fill out it however you want. When it comes to the red tree, I would suggest starting with Tumbling, getting the Defiance, maxing this out because of that break free cost reduction. I know it's only 440, but that's 440 stamina you save. Mystic Tenacity, really good one, but we're going to move over here. Hero's Vigor, you're going to want to get this for the health. Moving up here, Shield Master reduces the cost of your damage shield abilities by 10%, and then the Bastion. This reduces or increases the effectiveness of your damage shields by 3%, so you get a 15% increase to your damage shields. And this does apply to all damage shields. The other three I would suggest getting is Boundless Vitality. This grants max health, Ironclad, and Rejuvenation. Now, these are the 4 slottables you're going to have on your bar. Just like in the green tree, you're going to have the Professional Upkeep, Steed's Blessing, Liquid Efficiency, and Rationer. The other ones I would suggest unlocking right away is things like Hasty, Tireless Guardian, Fortification, Savage Defense, and Bashing Brutality, along with Nimble Protector. All of those are going to really help you in the long run. Some of these other ones you can unlock when you want to or when you get more points, but the main ones I'd focus on unlocking first. Definitely Hero's Vigor, Bastion, Rejuvenation, Ironclad, and Boundless Vitality. Max those out so you have them at your fingertips. Moving on to the blue tree. Now this is going to be a little bit different because we're not playing to be DPS, we're playing to be more of a healer or more of a tank, and I'm got to do something here. Let me remove that because we don't want that one. We actually want this one. So with this one, definitely Tireless Disciple is going to be one you're going to want to max out. The Precision, increasing your crit chance, and Fighting Finesse. These ones are ones I would work on unlocking, but your main ones is going to be things like the Staving Death. Yes, everything in Staving Death except for this, Resilience, unless you're playing PvP, but these down here are going to be really important for you tanking. Then the slottables down here are going to be... I gotta fix this, hold on. Fighting Ore, that's the damage one. Yeah, I knew I screwed up somewhere. So, the ones you're going to want to unlock down here is Duelist Rebuff, Enduring Resolve, and Unassailable. These are going to give you your damage reduction by 10% in those areas, like single target, damage over time, and area of effect. And then taking this one, the Fighting Finesse, this one increases critical damage and critical healing. As you can see, it's 10% with the extra 8% that you get. And then the base 50%. Healing and damage. Critical healing, critical damage. You get 50%. So you actually end up with a 75% or a 65% increase to your critical healing and critical damage done. And that's, again, why we use the Thief Mundus Stone. We want that crit surge to heal us, like, constantly. Alright, and that is it. So these ones, Duelist, Enduring Resolve, Unassailable, and then Fighting Finesse. And as always with all of my builds, I try to show them off in a dungeon type setting, but today we're going to do something a little different. We're actually going to do it in a trial setting, because this is where we're going to be able to see the true effectiveness of this build. And I'm actually going to be using the Sun Aspire Temple. Now, this is just to show you how well this build can mitigate damage if you know how to play it. Now, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing if you don't know how to play it. It comes with time. You're not going to know how to play this build right out the door if you're new to the game, and if you're an existing player and you're used to the traditional tank, you're going to have a lot of trouble playing this build because it doesn't work the same way. The reason I'm using a trial is a trial has a lot more difficult mobs than most DLC dungeons, and this is a DLC trial. So it's going to show you, again, pretty much how this build works in a way that just shows its effectiveness in mitigating damage and its survivability. So we're going to start with the back bar again. When we get in here, and I'm going to have a lot of enemies on me, and they're going to be hitting me for a lot of damage, but this is just, again, to show the effectiveness of the build. So, you notice how I cast the Bound Armaments right away. We're going to drop some lightning here, we're going to hit him with the Brawler, taunt, and then we're going to just keep up our other abilities. Oops. And you can see, like, I'm not even doing the heavy attack to keep the lightning up either, because we don't need it. And remember what I said, this build is every time you deal critical damage, you pretty much heal. So, and if you're doing heavy attacks as it is, and you can see this thing's throwing out lightning damage left and right, and it's not even from what you think. It's actually from the crit surge and stuff. And I will die. But like I said, this isn't made to really run trials. This is made for dungeons. So as you can see there, I was taking a lot of damage from the Alkash's Roar, more than anything, and the build works really well. It's just you have to know how to play it, and you have to know how to keep it, the stuff going out, but this is more for dungeon play. So, again, remember that. Dungeon play build. This is for tanking dungeons, mainly for speed clearing dungeons, getting through them really fast. Not looking for, trying to have a lot of headaches and stuff when doing them. And the areas it really shines the best, besides dungeons, is Overland. This build is amazing at Overland play. Solo play, perfect. but also really good at that group play and stuff. The other thing I would suggest, if you're interested in keeping your resources managed a little easier, is going in, instead of taking the Undaunted Magicka taunt, take the Undaunted Stamina taunt. The build does work really good also with Sword and Shield, but I would suggest keeping either the dual wield or two-handed as your backbar weapon. And again, you can also change out this to get the Major Breach if you want it from Razor Caltrops. It does cost you stamina, so it's a little bit less strain on your Magicka resources. So, but that's pretty much it for the Tempest Barbarian, guys. Hope you guys liked it. I love this build. I love playing it on live. It works out amazingly well, and it's super powerful. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So, you guys know what's coming next. If you guys like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. And if you do subscribe, I do suggest you click that notification bell to be notified when I post new videos. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.